Living in Virginia, you're in the fast lane on the information superhighway. We've invested $3 billion in Virginia's broadband network to give you one of the fastest internet connection speeds in the world, so you can build relationships, bring new business to our state, and meet the future of education. It's amazing what we can do together. Visit VCTA.com to learn how broadband connects the Commonwealth.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports, brought to you by the VCTA Broadband Association and Comcast, connecting Virginians to their government. We have two members from Southwest Virginia with us this morning. Senator Bill Stanley, good to see you.
Great always to see you, Woody.
Delegate Danny.
Thank you so much, Woody. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Good. Well, 3 weeks into the session, how are things going?
It is, before this week, the House had only probably approved about 20 so bills, but they have ratcheted it up this week. We got through a lot yesterday, not all good ones, so it's going to be a busy week. What we have been told is there's about 40% more bills that have been entered this year than has it passed. I probably got about 4 or 5 bills that I don't even know if they're going to get heard. And so that I think they're going to kind of sweep out stuff to the side. So, Senator Stanley, the same pace on the Senate side?
Well, I think since we have such close majority-minority different splits, the Democrats have led us before. 2 out of my 10 years that I've been there, the Democrats were in the majority. So I think they've had a little bit more experience on how to lead. But I think the way they're stacking right now are regular committees with multiple subcommittees that meet. And we're not giving bills the full hearing that the Republicans always made sure everyone got a full hearing before the full committee, before any votes were taken. Presents a new complication. And partly what I worry about, especially for our area, is many of these committees are run and chaired by people from Northern Virginia. And they're making decisions for people in Southside and Southwest Virginia. And for me, that's a great concern because they don't even bother to come south of the James to even take a look before they decide what they think is best for us. And what may work in Northern Virginia doesn't usually work at all in Southside and Southwest Virginia.
So what about the committee chairs on your side of the General Assembly?
Well, so if you look at leadership, all of leadership is from Fairfax County. And Fairfax County and Southside, Danville, Pittsylvania, Henry County is so different than our needs and their needs. And so as far as committee chair, the head of Agriculture, Chesapeake, and Natural Resources, and I was chair last year, you've got Delegate Ken Plum from Fairfax County. And I think he's got a little plot of grass in front of his yard, but that's about the only agriculture he has. But they have been fair so far in that particular committee, and so it is the problem we having on our side are conflicts. So they put me on education this year that I've never been on education before, but it just so happens that I and the chair lady of education have a conflict that education and agriculture, Chesapeake, and natural resources meet at the same time in 2 different buildings. And so that has to be a little bit running back and forth.
What's the state of the economy in Southside? The statewide unemployment rate, I believe, is about 2.6%. What's it like in your neck of the woods?
Woody, I think if you double that, that's about where we are, which is the lowest it's ever been. There's a combination of factors. One is our local governments and economic development people have brought in jobs. The Tobacco Commission has done a very good job of bringing in new employment, new employers. So we're really building a new economy, brick by brick, a new foundation for a long-lasting economy. So we're happy about that, but the pace is still slow. And why that unemployment rate is higher? Because we've had a lot of our children, young people, and even professionals leave and go to other areas where those jobs are that they can be employed. So it's a difficult time, but yet it's a promising time. We've seen and we've undertaken great endeavors to try to make our economy better and stronger. We're not dependent on the federal government like Northern Virginia is. So we have kind of an economy that's built independently, and we're moving in areas like tech, precision machining, advanced manufacturing, areas that Northern Virginia really doesn't either care about or want. So I think we're seeing a really good upturn. We're benefiting from the president's economic policies, and I think what we're going to see is a renaissance in Southside and Southwest Virginia that will last for decades to come.
So
if I can add to that, 2019 was a good year for Danville, Pittsylvania County. We have a team as far as economic development professionals in Danville and Pittsylvania County, and then Linda Green at the Institute. So we brought in about 1,200 jobs, announced jobs, and they will be over a period of time. And we had great capital investment. So these were from a small company all the way to a company that's going to employ about 700 people. So it's as Senator was saying, we're getting there step by step. We got some really great professionals who are working on this, and I think 2020 might even be a better year.
What about the need for additional sales and use taxes?
So what we, Halifax County put in a bill last year to allow a 1% sales tax by voter referendum. The voters had to approve of this, and that money was to go for school construction. So Pittsylvania County, Henry County, and the city of Danville have asked me to put that in. And for example, in the city of Danville, there's about $120 million worth of needs as far as renovations. If we raise property tax in the city of Danville, it would raise it by about a third, which is just unrealistic. And so these three bills would go forward if they get a hearing. got a notice yet they're going to get a hearing, but if they get a hearing, then there will be a referendum this November to see if they pass.
Is there a companion bill on the Senate side?
I don't think so.
Not that I know, but there are other counties that have applied for this tax increase of the sales tax to benefit the school modernization, school rebuilding.
And speaking of that, I know you for years promoted school modernization, especially in the rural parts of the state.
Absolutely, and I still do it today. And I've gone from a voice of one to now a voice of four, so that's an improvement, of 4 times improvement. But the importance of that cannot be overstated. We have schools in Southside and Southwest Virginia that were built before World War II.
Before World War II.
In Russell County, there's a school that was built, I believe, before World War I and has 1 electrical outlet per classroom. And so we must guarantee, I think, an equal education. That is to say that the student that's in Danville gets the same high-quality education as the student in Loudoun County. Because right now in Loudoun County, they're teaching computer coding to kids. Down in Danville, we don't have the infrastructure, and that is the physical plant of the school itself, to be able to do that and to provide our kids. I've learned over time in studying this issue that the vast majority of our students in K through 12 do not go on to college. So this is our opportunity to really create the workforce pipeline, starting in kindergarten, because when they get out of their senior year in high school and they graduate, they need to be as job ready as possible, because that's what's going to attract businesses into our area. If they don't have a modern school, then they're not going to get the same education as the child in Loudoun. So I proposed, one, a bill that will create minimum standards for what is determined in Virginia to be a modern school. 2, a referendum to have the voters tell us whether we should bond out and over $3 billion in bonds in order to fix our schools throughout the whole Commonwealth, in the inner cities and the rural areas. And then on top of that, I think we have to have an understanding that, we have schools that will be in place. A lot of the deterioration is from the roofs. So I've created a roof fund bill that will actually allocate based on need to those localities that need to fix their school. We went in schools in Danville where rainwater was coming through the roof all the way through the electrical system and the plumbing down into the classroom with mold, and the mildew smell was unbelievable. Kids can't learn that way. That's not the kind of learning environment we owe under our Constitution to do. And so I've also proposed a constitutional amendment which says, not in the Constitution, it says, we shall strive to provide a high-quality education. Well, McDonald's strives to make a perfect Big Mac every time it doesn't work. They're not obligated in that way. We're going to obligate Virginia and say we are going to provide an equal education for all students, no matter what their zip code is. And I'm hopeful that that will get positive response from delegates and senators. The funny thing is that those in Northern Virginia that have modern schools, building them every day, don't care about the inner cities and the rural areas getting modern schools and don't want to lift a finger to help. So what I've found is when I make these pitches on these very important bills that are beneficial to the inner cities and the rural areas, it's falling on deaf ears because they've got theirs. And that's unfortunate. If we start thinking regionally instead of globally for the Commonwealth of Virginia, then a lot of Virginia, the rest of Virginia, is going to get left out as Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads makes decisions for us.
And Delegate Marshall, yesterday the halls were flooded with teachers. I'm sure you're hearing about teacher raises and compensation.
Yeah, they want to go to a national average as far as teacher pay. So the average teacher pay in the city of Danville is just shy of $50,000, and so the national pay is a little bit above $60,000. And I told them I think the unintended consequences if you go to and make that $60,000 for the whole state, I think the unintended consequences is you're going to have the cost of living in our area is so much better than what it is up in Northern Virginia. Average house in Danville sells for about $130,000. In Northern Virginia, it's $500-some-thousand. So that cost of living, if you made that same amount of money, the money would go a lot farther in Southside Virginia. So I think that you'd have a migration of teachers from the northern area to our area, and I think the unintended consequences is that it would hurt more than it would help.
What about the reduction in revenues from the lottery fund as a result of these gray machines that have proliferated around the state over the past several years?
Can we talk about something else? I mean, it is significant, and I think Danny and I would both say that when we travel through our district, when we travel through our home, we're seeing these gray machines popping up in our minute markets and those convenience stores, and the problem is we're seeing some of our friends, people that we know in the neighborhoods, just blindly just standing there, just playing this machine over and over. It does generate revenue, but it has an adverse effect on the community as well, especially unregulated. So we've got to make a decision because it is taking away from our revenues from the lottery. Are we going to regulate it? And if we are, we better regulate it to the point where we're taking not only the tax money and making sure it's returned to the locality, because that money's getting taken out of the economic system in our locality. And two, to make sure that the lottery fund and its drive for educating our people and providing money for that education is not depleted because of these things. We've got a great decision to make here in the Commonwealth of Virginia on casino gambling and gray machines. Danny and I have had these discussions in legislative breakfasts, and we kind of woke some people up with our differing views. Danny is for it, and I understand why. It's not a moral issue for me. I think for us in Danville, it may make the decision that we're kind of throwing up the white flag and saying, we're not going to work on economic development. We're going to take this kind of cheap, short way out. And I worry about how it will affect communities, because we're talking about an industry, whether it be a gray machine or a casino, that has one motto: the house always wins. We're not going to be making a lot of millionaires in Southside Virginia with these machines or with these casinos, and it's a concern for me. I understand Danny's point.
All right, so my if there's a lot of steps before we'll have a casino in Virginia, or especially in Danville. There has to pass the General Assembly, the governor has to sign it, and then there will have to be a referendum again in the city of Danville. So the city of Danville's residents will say yes or no if they want a casino. So if they say yes, the Economic Development Department of Danville is not going to close up that 3,500 acres of land that we have out at Berry Hill that we probably have got $40 million in. We're not going to make that a soccer field. We're going to still try to find a company to fill that. So talking to the economic developer in Danville, in Pittsylvania County, the question I asked him, if we have a casino, is that a plus or is it a minus or is it neutral? He said really it's a neutral. He says that he didn't think it's a plus or a minus as far as economic development, as far as trying to hurt a company coming in. So if you look at what the minimum investment in a casino is going to be, the legislation said it's got to be at least $250 million. And that's going to be anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 jobs. 2019 was a good year for Danville, but if you add up all the jobs, like I mentioned earlier, it's about 1,200 jobs. If you add up all that investment, it was about $70 million. So this one project is going to be 4 times as big as in capital investment. And the reason that's important is because that pays taxes, property tax, it pays machinery and tool tax, etc. There's also part of the bill that 5% of the net gaming would stay in Danville. So that would help renovate schools. It would help renovate other parts of the state. So the reason I'm pushing this forward is because of I trust the voters. I trust the voters every 2 years. He trusts the voters every 4 years to make good decisions. That's why we're sitting here. And so people call me and says, "What should I do?" I said, the first thing you should do is do your research.
Did you just call us good decisions, by the way? I love that.
Do you? 12,000 people thought I was.
Yes. Danny, I think you're a great decision. I just want to make sure that's.
So listen, he's trying to divert now. So what I asked them, I said, you can Google anything. So Google, and there's the good and the bad and the ugly of this. And so there is a decision that would be made here in Richmond. There's a decision that we will make in Danville.
The House always wins, but it sounds like the House is going to pay a lot of taxes.
Well, then that's true, and certainly that is one reason to do it. And I'm not on a moral high horse. This is not me preaching what my faith is and how it affects my constituents. And Danny makes some very good arguments, and we've had fun debating it back and forth. And I think that's great for the health of our area and our region to be able to have that debate. And Danny's right. The House always wins, but the people will make the decision whether the House is there to win. What I don't want to see is that somehow, if Bristol's going to get a high-end casino, and if it's going to happen, or Hampton Roads is going to get the same thing, that we're not 4 blocks off the Vegas Strip kind of casino, and that is respectful to our history and mindful of our people and can fit in that community style. I tend to believe that even the great work Danny Marshall has done, I always say on the campaign trail, I used to say, government doesn't create private sector jobs. It was Don Merrick's statement he used to always say. And I said, well, Danny Marshall does. And he does. And he works very hard every single day to bring good companies in and create these jobs. I've never seen him tire by the challenge that is before him. And I'm seeing an economy that's building slowly, but with a foundation that even in a recession cannot be shaken. So I'm looking forward to that. I just don't want to see a diversion from the good work, the steady work that our economic development folks are doing, that our city councils are doing, our board of supervisors are doing. I want to see that continue, and so that's my position on casinos, and that's why it differs with Danny. But we agree to disagree and having a good time disagreeing it.
And again, the bill says a minimum of $250 million investment. So some of the casinos that the city of Danville went out and got to request for proposals, they got 7 different companies to make these proposals. A couple of those people knocked on my door and said, we are one of those 7, and we're planning on spending $350 million in that. So just think about the property taxes that would generate to the locality.
Funny, they're not knocking on my door.
Let's talk for a moment about rope, not dope. Another economic development proposal that you're pursuing.
And thank you for bringing that up. So last year, I had the House bill was patron, and Senator Ruff was the patron on the Senate bill. And what we did is to basically codify what the federal government allowed us to do as far as in 2018, the fall, they passed the federal farm bill. And so at that time, it allowed the cultivation of hemp. So we had quite a bit of hemp growers in our area, and it's the tobacco farmers were looking for a new crop, and so they were able to grow hemp and cultivate it with the equipment they already had. But we also found a lot of problems with it, and one of the problems we found was that last year that the farmers were not able to get crop insurance. It costs $10,000 to $20,000 an acre to put this in the fields, and then if you have a storm come through, it can take it out, and those guys are really rolling the dice, so to speak, that they could really lose a significant amount of money. So we brought that idea, the problem, up to Congressman Rickleman. He went back to Washington, got Virginia added to a bill that was going forward to allow crop insurance. So in 2020 season, we'll be able to get crop insurance. So what we need to do is, there's a lot of technical problems with this. and the Institute in Danville was instrumental. Mark Janak there was very helpful as far as the testing of hemp, but there's a lot of things that we still need to move forward. But I think this is a product that we will be able to go forward with. I've also have a bill in to direct the Virginia Economic Development Partnership to do a kind of a market research study on this to see how we can make the full circle. If you look at tobacco, tobacco was grown in our area, it was processed in our area, and then it was manufactured and made cigarettes out of it in our area. So the same thing can happen with hemp. Hemp is certainly grown there. It can be processed. The new companies going in Halifax County to process it. But then the CBD oils, or either they can make this jacket out of hemp and rope, not dope.
And then you can smoke it when you're done with your day.
Yeah, you get a headache then too. So, so what we're doing is trying to reinvent our economy in a number of different ways, not just going one path, but going 10 paths.
Yeah.
Senate Bill 1.
Yes.
Talk to us about it.
Well, I was really lucky. We stayed up late on the first day of filing to make sure. Senate Bill 1 has always some significance. And last year, I led the fight and have been leading the fight for 4 years to stop driver's license suspensions for merely the inability to pay a fine. I was seeing it in my practice as a trial attorney. Over and over, people were coming in on driving on suspendeds because they were trying to get to work, but they couldn't pay the fine. It wasn't their driving behavior that suspended their license. So what we were able to do with SB 1 is a continuation of what my bill was last year, that when it was defeated in the House, I got the governor to put it in his budget. So we have stopped license suspensions in Virginia for non-payment of fines. People are still paying their fines. What we found out is we were able to restore 30,000 Virginians automatically. More importantly, we're stopping about 5,000 a month that are coming through the court system, jamming up our court system for these charges. And what we're really doing is restoring dignity to the person that may have lost their license because of their financial, socioeconomic position. We want them to be a part of the community. We should not be creating debtors' prisons. That's not American. And so we're ending this arcane practice. So far it's sailing through the Senate. You know, my dad used to say victory has many fathers and failure is an orphan. Well, I am so amazed at how many people think this is a great idea now, because for 4 years I said it was a great idea and no one was listening. So we're finally going to end a terrible practice. And quite frankly, I think it has a big effect in our area, where a lot of people living at or below the poverty level aren't trying to go get jobs because they get in a car, or they can't get a car with insurance, but they get in a car and they get pulled over, merely trying to feed their family or put a roof over their head. And so when we restore dignity, we also restore the hope of prosperity. And so it's a very important bill, and that's why it's SB 1.
And let me add to that. I think it's a really important bill, and I'm glad the Senator put it back in again. And I never got a chance to vote for that in the House because it was always killed in a committee that I don't serve on. But in our area, we have people driving 30 minutes, 60 minutes to get a job. And so we don't have a subway. The subway is a sandwich shop on the corner. It's not. We don't have subway. We don't have bus transit. So what we got to do is we got to make it easy for those people to get to their job and keep that job. And so this bill right here will help that.
What about this proposed increase in the gas tax? How is that going to affect people's ability to get to and from work?
Well, when I go, Danville is right on the line. I mean, you could walk from like me to a senator, and you're from Virginia, North Carolina. So when I go get gas, I always look around at the license tags, and about half the people there are from North Carolina, because the North Carolina tax is quite a bit higher, which makes the gasoline higher. And so I see that news article that the governor wants to increase it 4 cents per gallon for the next 3 years, and so the bill has got a lot of it's kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly. And maybe it's just bad and ugly. I don't know. I hadn't found any good yet. So it's also in there was to do away with state inspections. I remember when you have to do it every 6 months, and I've gotten a lot of comments about that if you go buy a used car, you know that car has been inspected because you see a fresh sticker on there. If you just go buy a used car in the future, you don't know if it's going to be inspected. So, then bald tires, no brakes or whatnot. So, for our families out there, you don't know what's out on that road. So I think that was the ugly of the bill.
Your opinion?
Totally agree with him. But what we're also seeing is that we're not being included in economic infrastructure and road building. It's all going to Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads. We're talking about another tunnel. We can't even get I-73, which would bring thousands of jobs and millions of dollars worth of economic development. So there might be the good in that might mean that we're going to get some more road money.
Redistricting. I believe there is a resolution that has to be passed in identical form to the one that was passed last year in order for the voters to express their opinion on a new independent redistricting commission. Where do you see things shaping up on that?
Republicans have always supported it. We still support it, and it's amazing now that the Democrats are in power that suddenly they have questions about it, but before they wanted it. What you're seeing is hypocrisy of politics. It's a good idea. We need to take gerrymandering out of the system. We need to let the voters decide who's going to be the representative, not the representative deciding who their voters are going to be. So it's a good thing, and I hope that the Democrats will not go back on their word. I fear that they will, but I think they need to do this for Virginia. It's if their legislative social agenda is important, this is even more important to Virginia.
Danny?
I would agree. I think that we passed this last year, and when we were still in control, the Republicans were still in control, and so we heard after November election that, well, maybe we didn't like that. I think they had a little buyer's remorse, just exactly what the senator was saying. That, but this is the right thing to do, and hopefully we'll go forward with it.
Access to health care in your district and in your senatorial district, how are things faring?
Well, it's a little bit different in mine and probably than it is, because the senator's got a lot larger area. So I have the Danville Hospital, and I have the hospital in Marshall that serves Marshall and Henry County. So, and then we also have Centra that has a couple of locations throughout. So healthcare access is good. The cost is not good, but the access is you can get health care if you want to sit there for, my wife had a terrible cold right before Christmas, and so we went to one of those doc in a box type things and spent a half a day sitting there waiting for them to see us. And so we got health care, but it just took a while to get there.
And I would agree with that. The problem in rural areas is that you have to travel 70, 80, 90 miles to get to a doctor or a hospital. We've had hospitals close in Patrick County. We're trying to get back up. We're trying to bring telemedicine in there, so where we can do remote patient monitoring for the chronics like diabetes and COPN, those kind of things that really can have people present themselves in the emergency room at the highest level of care, highest cost, lowest reimbursement to the hospital. So we need to find a way to revolutionize how healthcare is delivered in a rural area, so that again, as I said earlier when it came to education, that everyone has the same equal opportunity to health care as someone in a more affluent area of the Commonwealth of Virginia.
I'm going to give you the last word because I've asked Danny this question before. This session will be a success if?
This session will be a success if we all survive it. I didn't know there was going to be a quiz here, but it'll be if Northern Virginia realizes that there is the rest of Virginia, there is a ROVA, and that we have needs too. We don't need to be dictated to. We don't need, when I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. But we need to be recognized as an important part of the fabric of the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Good to see you both. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the VCTA Broadband Association and Comcast. Until next time, I am Woody Evans.
Mm-hmm.